Welcome back to the Joust About Careers podcast. I'm your host, Brian Bratt, and this week's guest is 1994 Van Buren graduate Amy Hoffmann, who is a biocompatibility and medical device expert. In this episode, Amy shares how chemistry has played an important role in her career journey, how a wide variety of degrees can help a person get started in the medical device field, how her current employer, Project Medtech, started as a podcast, and much more. Whether you are interested in a career in biocompatibility and medical devices or are still exploring your options, I hope that what Amy shares today will help all of you make better career decisions and have fulfilling career journeys. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of Joust About Careers. And Amy, I'd like to start by asking you, how does a typical day look for a biocompatibility and medical device expert?
Well, so right now I'm doing a lot of quality management work. I work primarily with medical device startup companies, and my day can be extremely varied. So because I fill kind of a number of different roles for some of our clients, I work from home, and I spend a lot of time in front of the computer, either doing documentation behind the scenes or meeting with clients. When I'm meeting with clients, I might be advising them on test programs for their medical devices. I might be working through some quality management or regulatory strategies with them. I might be helping them develop a proof of concept protocol, or in some cases, it may be finding a contract manufacturer for them, somebody that's going to make the device that they have an idea for. So each day can be a little bit different.
So a lot of sitting in front of the computer. Now, your degree was in biochemistry. Correct. And you've had a lot of different positions over the course of your working life. And we'll get into some of those here in a little bit. But do all of the positions you have, do they all come back to chemistry, and that's the degree that allowed you to do what you're doing, or have there been some that really haven't been chemistry related?
At a high level, they've all been chemistry related. I did spend a little bit of time doing some sales and marketing work, which wasn't fully chemistry related, but because I was supporting analytical testing laboratories or analytical testing programs, there still was a chemistry component to that. Okay. So it's really still the chemistry and the biochemistry that's driven the majority of my career.
Right. Now, what you're doing is, like you said, working on medical devices, testing them and helping people develop them and all of that. Is there a sense of pressure on you? Because if there's a device and it either doesn't do what it needs to do or whatever, I don't know. And again, obviously you're not the one probably creating the product in most cases, or at least not now. And maybe you were previously with NAMSA and so forth. But I guess talk a little bit about that pressure, or is that something that you like? You like that pressure?
I like the pressure. I spent a lot of my career at NAMSA, and there, we were doing a lot of like preclinical testing. I was specifically on the extractables and leachables side for the majority of the time, which is essentially looking at medical devices and, what might be extracting out of those to become bioavailable to a patient that could cause a toxic response. But ultimately, that was always the decision of the client, and up to their interpretation as to whether the risk was something that they were assuming. Okay. In my current role, because I'm doing a lot more for quality systems and that, I feel like there's a little bit more pressure. It's still ultimately resides with the responsibility of the manufacturer, of the legal manufacturer of the device, but they're relying on us. I mean, we're kind of, from a quality management standpoint anyway, we're kind of going through their design and development process and making sure that they have all the right checks and balances in place to bring that device to market. Obviously, there's still a lot of preclinical and clinical testing that needs to happen to ensure that the device is safe in that. But we're really helping them a lot through their regulatory strategy and their quality management, to make sure that their device is going to be made in a safe way and that that's going to be repeatable over the life cycle of the device.
I'm a CPAP wearer myself, have been for about 20 years, and it's made a world of difference in my life. Are those the types of devices or that you might have been working on, or is it more things that are put into people's bodies with surgeries, or is it all of those things?
It's all of those things. It could be anything from a medical device, can be anything from, a wound dressing or Band-Aid to a permanent implant. It can be infusion pumps. It can be tubing that's used in a hospital setting. Respiratory devices like CPAPs and that are one that the FDA has a lot of scrutiny over. There's been recalls from different companies for various reasons on that, as there has been on like some orthopedic implants and that, with the cleaning processes. So those are a lot of the things that we try to help people test and avoid when they're bringing their device to market.
Okay. When you were a high school student at Van Buren, was this career on your radar? Is this what you thought you would do when you were graduating from Van Buren, or did you have other plans? And I guess what then got you to where you are today?
I've always had a strong interest in sciences and in biology and chemistry specifically. I took all the science classes at Van Buren at the time, which I'm sure there's probably different opportunities there now, especially with, College Credit Plus and things like that students can do. But those were the classes that I enjoyed the most. I went to the University of Cincinnati, and I actually started my major in chemical engineering. And one of the reasons that I chose the University of Cincinnati was because of their co-op program, which gives you the opportunity. They're no longer on quarters, so I don't know exactly how they do it now. But at the time, you would go to school for the first year as a freshman, and then for the next 3 years, you would alternate between co-op and school. So you would go to school for a quarter, you would work for a quarter, and then your senior year, you would do the full year. But my first co-op I did at a semiconductor firm out in Chandler, Arizona, and was working kind of with the chemical engineering group there. But when things were a little slow, I moved over to the quality team and was helping out with them with some of the documentation, some of the research on failure mode and that of the semiconductor wafers. And I kind of decided that I was liking the chemistry aspect of it a little bit more than the engineering aspect. So when I went back for my third year, I actually changed my major to biochemistry at that point.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily, think about medical devices at the time that I was in high school, and really didn't get involved in that till about 5 years out of college, and haven't really left the industry since. So that's been, over 22 years now. So.
Right. So yeah, you talked a little bit about, you started at Anatrace as an associate chemist, and says you synthesized research grade detergents for the medical community. So you also said that's not really medical devices. So I guess what's the difference between research grade detergents for medical versus medical devices?
So there we were making a lot of detergents. And when people think of detergents, they probably think of like soaps, and that's not,
right.
Really what this is exactly. Okay. But what it allowed researchers to do was to extract proteins from a cellular system and be able to study them outside those cells, which has implications into like drug pharmaceuticals, where they can study how, certain medicines and that might interact with the cells and help or harm. So we did a lot of our clients were places like St. Jude, Case Western, Vanderbilt. We worked with a lot of universities and that at that time.
Okay. So if someone wanted to end up where you are today, is biochemistry the ideal major? Are there other options for someone when they're looking at what a college offers?
There's definitely other options. And, I think one of the things that people have to remember is that when you get a degree, that doesn't mean that's what you have to end up doing. My boss specifically is an industrial engineer. One of the colleagues that I work with quite frequently is a chemical engineer. There's a lot more opportunities today, I think, in medical device engineering or biomedical engineering. That was just kind of a emerging course of study maybe when I was graduating. There was a few schools that offered the biomedical or the medical device engineering, but I think that's a lot stronger opportunity now. But a lot of the people that I know that, went to school in chemical engineering ended up doing something completely different. Right. And, like I said, having the chemistry degree allowed me to, expand into sales and marketing and other areas. So, there's a lot of different opportunities and unique ways to get there sometimes.
Right. Now, you've done a lot of different things in your career, but you've done it all with a bachelor's degree. Is that typical if someone was coming out of college today? Would a bachelor's degree provide all of the opportunities you've had, or would advanced degrees beyond a bachelor's maybe be required?
I don't think they would necessarily be required. The hard part sometimes is getting the initial experience. So anytime that you have opportunities to do co-ops or internships or volunteer work in the area that you're interested can help build that experience. One of the things that can be really hard now, you look at LinkedIn or other places for career opportunities, and they want an entry-level position that has 5 years of experience. Well, yeah. How are you supposed to do that? So anytime you can find opportunities like I said, as internships or co-ops or even volunteers sometimes can help do that. Right. And I think that getting an advanced degree can definitely set you apart. But it's not always required. And sometimes you can get a job and then perhaps the company would pay for continuing education, and allow you to get your master's or your PhD while you're working as well.
That's always the best case scenario. Let someone else pay for it.
Correct.
As you look at your career, what would you say are some of the best aspects of it? And what are some of those aspects that you tolerate, but maybe aren't the best?
One of my favorite things has always been working with the clients, getting to see the unusual devices or ideas that people have, sometimes before they really come out into the marketplace. A lot of people know now about the insulin pumps that is used in type 1 diabetes. And, I got to see some of those in a laboratory setting before they really became so well known to the general public. So getting to see some of those early concept ideas has always been really interesting. For me, I'm not a strong computer user all the time in terms of, when I'm doing documentation or writing SOPs or things like that. I don't mind the content. It's the editing. It's the making sure that all the grammar's in line and all the font lines up, and those things can be a little tedious sometimes. But the actual conversations with the people and helping bring those devices to market that really make an impact in everybody's life. Like you said, the CPAP has been a big thing for you, and for other people it might be a knee replacement or even intraocular lens that's used, in the eye or things like that. So when you really get those opportunities to see how the devices that you've worked on can impact people's lives every day is really a cool thing.
Right. What advice would you have for someone who's considering going into this career field?
Just, be willing to keep your options open. Think about what you want to do. And sometimes maybe a more general degree can, like chemistry, biochemistry, you don't have to necessarily pigeonhole yourself into one particular thing, but be willing to be open to a lot of new experiences and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. There's a lot of networking opportunities, even when you're later in high school or into college, you can look for different groups that maybe host social mixers or things to kind of start to meet people in the industry you're interested in. I actually went to one up in Detroit last night that was sponsored by Mich Bio. There was a lot of students there from like Wayne State, University of Michigan, as well as people from industry that were in all different types of med tech. So it was kind of giving those students the opportunity to meet people that are in the industry and working and build some connections so that when they start to graduate, they maybe have an idea what they could do with their career or have made some contacts to get their foot in the door. That can be a huge thing. It's a competitive job market. And when you can build those relationships early, people will go to bat for you later.
Yeah, networking is always important. Not easy for everyone, but it is very, very important. Is there one device that sticks out in your mind as one that you're especially proud of having worked on and brought to market so that, it could help people?
I can't think of anything specifically. Unfortunately, working in the lab for so many years, a lot of times, we kind of had an idea what the devices were, but the way that we did the analytical work is a lot of times you were trying to understand what was being extracted from the device. So a lot of times it was cut up pieces. So you may not even know at the time what you're working with. There's a couple I'm really excited about now that I'm working on, but because they're just at a startup phase and they're, very early market, they're not really things I can talk about at this time. But some cool stuff that's out there in the discovery phases.
How long does it usually take for a device to move from, an idea to actually being used by doctors and so forth?
It can be years.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Just to do preclinical work and get an early submission through the FDA before you even get into clinical trials and all that can take a year or longer. And a lot of it is also raising funds as well. So finding if you've got an idea and you're at a bigger company like a Stryker, a Medtronic, a Johnson and Johnson, they have the resources and the capital to maybe do that a little bit faster.
Right.
But when we're working with startups, a lot of times maybe we're working in a group as part of their master's degree or their senior or their PhD thesis. And they want to take that product that they were thinking about in college and turn it into a device. Well, how are they going to pay for that? So one of the things that we help do is connect them with investors. We give companies the opportunity to pitch their product, and they might, be able to gather investments that way. We have people in our network that we know are friendly to medical device inventors and might be able to make some connections, or they just have to go out and find those connections to get funding and go through the process. So it can take time to raise the capital to be able to do that, and then to get everything in place to move forward. And then the manufacturing process, the testing process, the clinical trials, it can go on for quite a long time.
Doesn't happen overnight.
No, not at all.
Now, I noticed on your LinkedIn profile today that Project Medtech, who you work for now, was named 2025's leading medtech innovation company. So that sounds pretty cool. I guess, can you say anything about that or what it would take for a company to earn an award like that?
Yeah, I mean, Project Medtech is a really cool company. It's a small startup out of Cleveland, Ohio, actually. And the person that started there's three individuals that started the company, but primarily one of them was full-time initially. But it actually started as a podcast with the idea of, there's a lot of cool things going on in med tech. How do we get the information out there about it? How do we learn about it? How do people learn from each other? And then eventually they, kind of started to grow a little bit, but, we kind of talk about ourselves as networkers, educators, and consultants. So, we've continued on. Actually, Project Medtech just did their 251st podcast. So there's all kinds of different topics around med tech that they've covered. But we also host different symposiums. We've got one coming up in Detroit in May. That's the Midwest Showcase, where I think they have 10 to 15 different startup companies that will be participating in a pitch deck competition, but also brings in investors and suppliers that might be able to offer services to those companies, and kind of gets everybody in the same room so that they can have discussions about where medtech's going, how to conquer some of the different challenges that medical device companies face, and just kind of do that. And then last year, for the first time, they actually had a symposium in Europe. So they were in Denmark, and we're focused on how do companies that are outside the US bring their devices into the US? What are the different regulations and pathways that they might need to do? So, just really forward thinking in bringing all those different aspects of medicine, med tech together to have those difficult conversations.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah, that it started with a podcast and now it's developed into this. And like you said, those relationships, bringing people together to help the person that needs money, find the people that are willing to give the money and all of that. So that is really, really cool. As you look back at yourself in high school, what do you know now about careers that you wish you had known when you were in high school?
I think one of the things, like I said before, you don't have to know exactly what your pathway is going to be. If you have a general idea of the things that you're interested in, you can start to explore those. I think there's so many more options for students today for exploring careers than there were 30 years ago. I have a daughter who's in high school. She's a freshman now, and they just yesterday had a meeting to get signed up on this app that they're using to explore different careers and different colleges, and they can fill out different quizzes and stuff that kind of tell them what kind of careers they might be interested in and help them find colleges that match that. And I think, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there and to explore different things, talk to different people. And, there might be things that you never even considered that could be really good career opportunities.
Well, Amy, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your career experience. Very, very interesting. Again, it's one of those careers that I think there are people that, they love science, but they don't always think about something like what you're doing. So very, very interesting. Really appreciate you sharing all of that. And I hope some people will maybe reach out to you and ask some more questions. So thank you very much and good luck as you continue your career journey.
Thank you.
If you liked this Joust About Careers episode, you can explore previous episodes and highlights to learn about even more careers of Van Buren graduates. To be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for spending a portion of your day with us, and we hope you will continue to prepare for your future by learning just about careers.